thanks very much for your time, and thanks for having us. I wanted to talk about technology and the position of technology, and a little bit about the trust. The trust is managed by 4 of us directly in San Francisco. We are part of a large technology team at Allianz. We have another 5 people who help manage an AI fund, for example, in San Francisco that we work with, as well as colleagues in Hong Kong, Japan, Frankfurt, Germany, and UK. Our view of technology is it's made up of many different subsectors that are high growth, and we try to find these subsectors and find the leader in the subsector. The idea is that we build our portfolio from the bottom up and stock by stock, and we look for the leaders in these emerging subsectors of technology. The idea is that what we're trying to do with the portfolio is build a portfolio of many different attractive subsectors, and the leader in technology, whether it's consumer technology or enterprise technology, tends to gain share over time, and therefore, even though we pay a little bit more for the leader, we have a higher probability of being successful in that subsector. And so we basically make this portfolio up of these different subsectors. Technology has become a very broad sector, so it's not just growth, it's not just GARP, it's not just value, it's a combination of all of those things. And in our portfolio, we both have all 3 of these areas represented. I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into the actual portfolio. The multiple of technology has gone up in this crisis. And I think the reason for that is that many of the large technology companies now have subscription models or service models that make them less susceptible to the economy, and that's been, that isn't true necessarily for the advertising-based models like Google and Facebook. But if you look at the model of a Netflix, for example, it's been benefited in this environment. Amazon obviously has been benefited in this environment. So Microsoft is kind of net benefited in this environment with their cloud and Office 360 and Teams efforts. So many of these companies have gotten a little bit higher valuation in this environment, but we think it's justified. If we look at our portfolio, we've traditionally been large and mid-cap investors, not mega-cap investors. I would say that our view is that you can buy the 5 mega-cap companies, and we own most of those companies. But what our expertise is finding the mid-cap and large-cap companies that are going to become the mega-caps of the future, and that is what we believe is our expertise, and that's how we positioned our portfolio. Performance has been good over a long period of time and has been very good this year. If we look at the composition of the portfolio, this just shows some of our top 10 for the last for the period ending June 30th, and you can see we've got Apple and Microsoft as large positions in the portfolio, much smaller than the benchmark positions, which are 12 or 13%. But then we start into some of the innovative companies. I would just talk about CrowdStrike and Zscaler, which are the leaders in securing the cloud and securing the endpoint, which are particularly relevant in this COVID and work from anywhere environment that we're in and will continue to be in our view soon. New modality of corporate work, Tesla, it doesn't have to be explained. And then value stocks like Micron and Samsung, which sell at 10 times next year, less than 10 times next year's earnings. These are companies that have very high margins, very low multiples, and they're obviously very cyclical companies. But we think that the advent of 5G phones, cloud computing, as well as the replacement of PC devices gives them quite a nice tailwind over the next year. And then some emerging companies like Twilio, messaging, and PayPal, and digital wallets. Those are themes that we're very enthusiastic about as well. This is of the portfolio. I would highlight that we focus on earnings growth. We believe in looking for earnings growth in companies and not just revenue growth. And therefore, if you look at over the next 3 to 5 years, you're basically getting a 50% higher earnings growth than you are by owning benchmark companies, which still are projected to grow at 16% in their earnings. And you're paying more for it, but in our view, many of these models are going to show very rapid earnings growth over the next couple of years. I think rather than talking about what we did, I think what I'd like to talk about is positioning. I think that the reason that technology is attractive is that you have this movement toward replacing the digital infrastructure of the world, or replacing the infrastructure of the world with a digital infrastructure and with a cloud infrastructure. And we're about 10 to 20% of the way through that transition. Most companies still have most of their processing and most of their systems are on premise. And I think that what this pandemic has emphasized is companies that were moving toward a digital framework in their companies and moving to a cloud framework in their processing are way ahead of the other companies. And others that weren't there are now trying to get there as quickly as possible. So I think I'll turn it over to Mike and have him talk about some of these major themes.
Sure. Thanks, Walt. And I think it's worth noting, even though a lot of these companies have really kind of have become kind of more mainstream oriented during COVID, a lot of these names we've been fans of for multiple years. So I think at a high level, as we've thought about the movement to digital, I think we've thought about how do companies, businesses, consumers, how do you interact with your customer? And that customer could be a business or that customer could be a consumer. And we've looked for tools and technologies that really facilitate that aspect of the business. And luckily for us, we've been able to find a number of names that really help companies do that. And if I use just an example for those of us on the call today, if you just think about interacting with a retailer, post COVID, it's probably going to be a different interaction than it was previously. You may want to be able to pick up that item at the curbside because you don't want to go in the store. You may be able to want to shop online prior to going to the store, making sure that when you get there, they recognize kind of who Mike Seidenberg is, what I was looking at, et cetera, et cetera. And the reality is, if you don't change how you interact with your customer, I think you're going to be kind of left by the wayside. So, and we've taken this idea of collaboration and efficacy, and we've actually expanded on it to the extent that if you think about everybody on this call today, we're on this product that's called GoToMeeting, which required developers to write lines of code to facilitate everybody watching me speak right now. We've been able to find companies like an Atlassian that really help developers out. One of our key areas of focus over the past couple of years has been to figure out how do you make your most important employees that much more efficient as an organization. And Atlassian's a good example of that. And there are other examples such as Zoom, such as Microsoft with Teams, And, what we really do as an organization is we like to go and observe, and we like to talk to people that use the products to understand, how happy are they with their product, and B, if they're happy, what would they like to buy next from the company? Because I kind of have a pretty simple philosophy, and I came out of software a long time ago, but I kind of have a key philosophy, which is there are not that many happy customers in software, and therefore, if you can find a company that's happy with their product, you can probably sell them more stuff. So we use that as a framework. The reality is that during COVID, it has basically brought everything front and center for all these companies. And now they really need to figure out how do they kind of generate sales in the new normal, which is, for some people, it's going to be all online. For some people, it's going to be supply chain related, dealing with suppliers, et cetera, et cetera. But I think for everyone, it's fair to say things have changed. And a lot of the companies with, in our portfolio, which here again, we've owned them for many years. We think that's just a trend that has kind of paid off for us thus far, and we think it kind of persists, over the next couple of years for sure, because we're still early days. I can go into specific examples, but at a high level, that's how we're kind of thinking about the world we operate in. Walt, do you want me to?
No, and I think Mike has talked about enterprise and software. I would say that you have that same kind of dynamic change in retail and payment systems. Manufacturing is moving back from China into different geographies, and you have, again, a retooling and an increased automation use in the new factories that are being built. Entertainment has been blown up, it's being blown up by over-the-top video, and the vehicle industry is being blown up by this transition to electrical connected vehicles with autonomy capability. So I think that there are subsectors of the economy where technology is at work and disrupting those subsectors, and we're trying to own the disruptive companies that are going to be the leaders in these sectors in the future.
And I think overarching Walt's comment is this idea of just movement to the cloud. And, for some companies, it may be hybrid, but don't forget now, most companies don't want lots of people in a data center right now. So the idea of moving from a fixed cost, a piece of equipment in a data center to a variable cost cloud is something that really is top of mind, not only for, just innovation perspective, but to some degree from operational and healthcare perspective near term. Operational is going to persist for a long time, but even now we hear companies say, we're sweating our assets longer because we don't want to send people into data centers. So just to add to Walt's point.